Okay, I'd like to say your name so everybody knows everybody.
Bill.
David.
Nick.
Pete.
Mandy.
Richard. Simon.
Catherine.
Nigel.
Taylor. Toby.
Eliani.
Mark. Robert.
Couple of newbies here. Yeah. All know what it's all about.
Last time I was here was about probably 6 months ago, and yeah, I've done a bit of reading on the topic.
Yeah.
It's all new to me.
New to you. And you've done a bit too, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done a lot of reading.
Yeah. Well, it's not anything new we teach you. We don't teach you anything, and we don't tell you anything again. No teacher to know. The point, all we do is point and ask you to look to where we're pointing to see for yourself. It's something that only you can grasp and understand or recognise. Nobody's ever going to give you anything, or you're not going to get anything. No matter what you've been told in all the scriptures and all the rest of it, you've got to do this, got to do that. But what we're talking about is basically your natural state, what you actually are. How the life essence is patterning, shaping and forming that body-mind pattern that you call you is the same life essence is patterning, shaping and forming this whole universe, this whole manifestation. And it's the base of everything. And you'll see that in a lot of the scriptures and texts, ancient scriptures and texts. In Hinduism, for instance, they call it Advaita. Advaita translated means non-duality. And they try to explain non-duality by saying it's one without a second. Only that. And they put that one without a second because even the idea of one implies there could be other than one. So to cancel out any idea there is anything other than that, they say it's one without a second. And the Buddhists put it in different terms, and saying the same thing. They'll say it's non-conceptual, ever fresh, presence awareness. And they add on to that just this, nothing else, pointing out that's this basic presence awareness. There's no one here who is not aware of being present, or that presence awareness is not right with you right now. But there's probably lots of concepts, ideas and thoughts and images going on that seemingly obscuring it. But it's basic, the base, the actuality of what you are. Non-conceptual, and they say ever fresh. The ever fresh, people miss out on that one. And realise ever fresh means it's timeless, it's spontaneous, it's natural. It's not, hasn't any beginning or any end, just a spontaneous emanation. And as I say, it's that basic presence awareness that's each. Nobody can negate your presence right now, the knowing that you are, in other words, put it in different words. Everybody, there's a knowing that you are, everybody knows that you are. What you are, you might put all sorts of concepts on it, and ideas and images. But it's non-conceptual. None of those concepts can ever grasp it. A lot of the other traditions talking about it will say it's omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. Omnipresence is total presence, omnipotence is total power, and omniscience is total intelligence. Not three things they're talking about, not three things, but three aspects of the one. Just like steam, water and ice are three aspects of H2O. So they're all pointing to the one. Oneness, in other words. They put different labels on it, consciousness, awareness, and gosh knows what. Anybody unaware right now? And you realise, no, I'm not unaware, so you must be aware. You must be that awareness we're pointing at. And when they call it oneness, could that awareness be anything other than the oneness, if it's only one, or could the oneness be anything other than the awareness? So when people get the concept of awareness and try to look for some fancy thing that they call awareness of some state of it, But it basically means that the oneness is awareness. And you are that oneness. What we call you, that body, mind, entity you believe yourself to be, is that one essence that's patterning, shaping and forming and expressing as everything. The Buddha called it a couple of 10,000 years ago, he called it a cognising emptiness. The cognising or knowing, or that emptiness is suffused with a knowing or a cognising. The knowingness or the cognising is the pure intelligence. He called it a cognising emptiness, and he made the statement that emptiness is form, pointing out that this manifestation, all these manifestations, is forms. They're all pattern shapes and forms. And they are that emptiness, because he turned it around the other way and said the form can be nothing other than the emptiness. Though it's all seemingly different, solid and substantial, it's still that one essence, patterning, shaping, forming, and everything, as everything. And they explain that to you too, when they said emptiness is form, the form could be nothing than emptiness. They'll tell you also, if you look into some of these texts, that this manifestation is Maya, or illusion. It only appears, these shapes and forms that we see only appear to be so. In a bit of investigation looking into them, you see they'll fall apart. We've got this idea we are the body mind, this person. Well, look at that, where did the word person come from? Ancients put that label on it many years ago. Doesn't it come from persona, the mask? Pointing out we've got this mask of identity on ourselves. I'm Bob, the Australian, the good fellow, blah, 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 a conceptual image. And that's the mask, a conceptual image of that myself. And so we've got this mask of identity. And the Saga tells you that too. He said, don't pretend to be what you're not, and don't refuse to be what you are. We're pretending to be this imagined body, mind, entity, this pattern, shape and form of body, mind. But we're not that. We are the essence that manifests pattern, shapes and forms it, the same cognising emptiness that's manifesting this universe. It's not separate. So he said, don't pretend to be what you're not, and don't refuse to be what you are. What you are, when it's all broken down, is an emptiness, the cognising emptiness, or the pure awareness, which has no shape, no form, no beginning, no end, no birth, no death. But it can't be negated. So he says, don't pretend to be what you're not, and don't refuse to be what you are. Nobody wants to be no thing. So we carry around this conceptual image of what we think we are, and live from that point of view. And that's the cause of all our problems. What we pointed out in those few statements I made at the start, pointing out that there is absolutely no duality in non-duality, though we have this dualistic manifestation. And it couldn't be a manifestation if it didn't vibrate and pattern dualistically. Look into that and see, because what we point out here is that the false cannot stand up to the investigation. You've got all these false beliefs, ideas and concepts. When you investigate them, they'll fall apart when you look into them yourself. So they're not true. Right? So he said the false cannot, we've got this idea, as I say, that manifestation is a dualistic manifestation. It couldn't be any other way. Couldn't be day without night, silence without sound, movement without stillness, whatever. You know, I'll have a look at it and see it for yourself. It's all patterning and vibrating and patterning, shaping and forming dualistically. That's why they call it Maya or illusion. Though it's appearing solid and substantial, all these different patterns, they are illusionary patterns that we have about this manifestation. And while we're believing we are this individual, this separate entity, we get into all sorts of problems, all sorts of psychological problems and strife and all the rest of it. Because duality We're pointing out that there's absolutely no duality in non-duality. Duality means more than one, it means two or more. And we're pointing out and saying that there's no duality, absolutely none whatsoever. So, you can never get to non-duality from duality. So if you're starting from the fact that you're with a believed in entity, the individual, the person, no matter what satsang or what book you read or what path you go on, you can never get there. Because you're starting from a viewpoint, a point of view that has no substance or any independent nature. A believed in entity. And you are that presence awareness right now. Believe you are this body mind, but have a look and see if you are that. Are you this body? We'll say, well, you know, in actuality, you know you're not the body. But you don't really see it because we say my body, my mind. Don't you say my house, my car, my coat? Are you the house? Are you the car? Are you the coat? You know you're not. So maybe you're not the body or the mind. And if you have a look, you'll see for certain that you're not the body or the mind. What's this body made up of? Look into it and see. Try and find, if you think you are this body, try and find a point in that body anywhere you can say, this is where I begin. And you look into it, you can't find a point anywhere that says this is where it begins. Look a bit further, what's this body made up of? Can't find a point where it begins. What's it made up of? And you realise this body's made up of elements. It's made up of air, earth, water, fire, space, just the same as the elements around you. So, are you these elements? If you're the third body, you would be these elements. And can you separate yourself from these elements? Separate yourself from the air if you think you're a separate entity, an individual, a person. Separate yourself from the air, see how long it lasts. Take the water out of your body, it's 80% water. Take the body temperature, the fire. Get off the earth, get out of space. You realise you can't separate yourself from those elements. And what are those elements? When you look into those elements, you realise they can all be broken down to subatomic particles into pure energy. So in reality, this body is just a vibrating pattern of energy, just the same as a manifestation is a vibrating pattern of energy. And it can vibrate into all these different shapes, patterns and forms, quite naturally. And that's that pure intelligence energy. I use the term intelligence energy because I don't use the term God here. Because you can get confused with that term. Purely and simply because we all come from different traditions, different backgrounds. Some of us could be atheists, some of us could be agnostics, some of us could be Christians, Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Jews, or whatever. So when I start talking about God, you're related to what your traditional belief is, and so get confused. Wouldn't see the actuality of what we're saying, get confused with it. So that's why I call it intelligence energy. And when I'm talking about intelligence, I'm not talking about your intellects. Because there are different degrees of intellect in this room. Some of you are a lot smarter than I'll ever like you to be. Some of you mightn't be quite so smart. But there are different degrees of intelligence. I'm not talking about your intellect. When I'm talking about intelligence, I'm saying look out there in nature, into the natural state. And you'll see out there in nature there's galaxies formed, there's planets moving around, Earth moving around the sun, seasons coming and going, tides coming in and out. Doesn't it imply that nature itself is suffused with an innate intelligence? It's not some old guy out there on a cloud pulling strings. If you pray to him, he'll do something right for you. If you do the wrong thing, he's going to punish you. It's patterning, shaping and forming all this manifestation. There's not one particle that is not suffused with that innate intelligence. Bring it back to where you are. Are you any different from nature? And you realise it's that same intelligence that's beating your heart right now, that's breathing you, that's growing your hair and your fingernails, that's digesting your food, it's replacing the cells in your body. What do you have to do about that? You have to say, I've got to take another breath, or I've got to expand and contract my heart. You realise it's all happening spontaneously, naturally and effortlessly. You're not doing anything at all about it. It's only when the thinker comes up you believe you are the thinker and have some power. When we look into that investigation, that'll fall apart also. So it's that same intelligence energy, and intelligence is another term for knowing. The knowing that you are. Nobody can say I am not. Each one of you knows that I am. Because if I ask you, do you believe that you are, or do you know that you are? You'll tell me emphatically, I know that I am. So it's not a belief. And that's another thing you've got to understand, that the belief is not the action. Well, we've got all these beliefs about different things, but look at your dictionary definition of belief. It's an unquestioned acceptance of something in the absence of reason. Acceptance of an alleged fact without positive knowledge or proof. So most of these beliefs you have, when you put them to that test, they'll fall apart. They can't stand up to them. So you can't really say, we're getting back to intelligence energy. What I call intelligence energy. Intelligence is the knowing. You are knowing right now. That's what I'm talking about, intelligence. Not thinking, but pure knowing. And any energy is an activity. Knowing is not some dead thing that's happened before. It's spontaneously going on right now. That knowing is spontaneously happening. And any happening, any occurrence, is a movement of energy. So the activity of knowing is what we call intelligence energy. And that activity of knowing is going on right with you right now. So you are that, no different from that essence, the activity of knowing. And that activity of knowing, patterns, shapes and forms are being formed, thoughts and feelings, emotions, all that are coming up in it. But it's still the one essence that's vibrating and doing anything, everything. So if you're not the body, are you this thing called mind? Well, if you believe you are the mind, show me your mind. What do you call mind? When you really look into it, you can't grasp anything at all and say, this is mind. Look at a place and say, there's no such thing as mind apart from a thought. What we call thinking, we put the label on mind. But if you believe you are the mind, and mind is thought, which particular thought are you? And you realise the sense of presence, that sense of presence with you right now, the knowing that you are, translates and expresses through thought as the thought I am. That's the primary thought. I am. So if you believe you are the mind, and mind is thought, you'd believe you were that thought. But is that thought with you all the time? Is it there when you're asleep, unconscious, or under an anaesthetic? It's not there. Throughout the day when you're thinking other things, you can't think two thoughts at the same time. It's not there. So if you were that thought and the thought disappeared, wouldn't it be the finish of you? That you're willing to go to sleep each night without that thought, and you wake up in the morning, you don't disappear, so you realise there's something more there than the thought up believed in entity. And what is thought after all? Investigate that and have a look. You'll see the thought at the subtle, and when you're thinking silently, you'll notice there's a subtle movement going on somewhere in that pattern you call you. Sensational movement going on. So, very subtle. When it comes out as words, like these words are now, these words are thoughts being spoken, and isn't word sound? And what's sound? Isn't sound a vibration? A movement of energy? So we've broken this body down to a pattern of energy, we've broken the mind down to a pattern of energy, so you see it's all that vibrating pattern of intelligence energy. There is no substance to any entity whatsoever. No entity that's got any substance or can stand on its own. So you can't say you are this body mind. And look back, the ancients looked into this years ago, and they put labels on certain things. They called this body mind a person. We call ourselves a person. Well, where does that word come from? Doesn't it come from persona, the mask? Pointing out you've got this mask of identity on ourselves. Pointing out we are, that's the mask, the idea of a persona, person. Or another way of looking at it is per meaning through, and sona sound, through a vibration. That's all it is, a vibrating pattern of energy. Seeming solid and substantial, we've taken a belief we are that person, the separate entity, the individual. And that's where all our problems come about from. Because when we take an idea that there's something separate, you're into dualism. And we're talking about the base is non-duality. So that's what it's all about, is non-duality, non-dual, not one, not two. So you go out there, and we do this, read this book, look at this mantra, do this satsang or whatever, all with the idea and belief that we're going to become something called enlightenment or self-realisation or some other label we put on. We're going to become something. But don't you realise becoming implies a future time? And when we pointed out there is no future time, it's omnipresence, total presence. It's just a spontaneous emanation that's happening right now. When can you say now is beginning? As you say it's beginning now, it's already ending. As you say it's ending now, it's already beginning again. So there's no static point to it anywhere. It's spontaneous. So you're never going to become. It's pointless looking, trying to become from a dualistic viewpoint. You never reach non-duality. So that's why we say it starts from the fact that you already are that. You already are that. You always have been and always will be. Even if you don't recognise this moment. But if you start from that fact, you don't have to search. The mind's not taking up with the search. You've probably been seeking for many years, a lot of us. So you don't have to search. You start from that fact and realise, well, that's the base, it's there. That awareness is there. I can't negate it. It's just as it is. And all you've got to do then is watch what's seemingly coming up and obscuring it. What thoughts, feelings or emotions or ideas or concepts you've got about yourself and saying, there's this or that, no. And then you can work and look at the concepts and see what they are. You don't have to touch what you already are because it's pointless looking and touching it because it's already total. It's already there. You're already there. So we've got to look at the body and the mind. And when did this, you believe you are this body, when did this body begin? Well, you'll tell me I was born. But can anybody here actually remember your birth? You look at that, you go back and you realise you can't. You can only go back a certain time, to about the time you were 2.5. Beyond that you don't know. Because the capacity of reasoning hadn't developed in you at that stage. There was no capacity of reasoning. You don't remember your birth. And that capacity of reasoning develops in these little children, about 2.5. And you look at a little child before, that little baby, he's got no idea he's separate whatsoever. Because he's got no words, got no concepts, can't discriminate, but he's seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, all naturally and spontaneously. But he's got no idea he's separate. About 2.5, we start to learn words from our parents. They're fussing around him and saying, Johnny, you're a little good little boy, you're not so good, you're this, that, and the other. Up till that time, he's got no words. And looking into these words, as I pointed out before, we've got this thing called, in the thinking there is words, labelled. Looking into these words, and see that these words are very mechanical, the way it functions. Thinking is very mechanical. Because you're either in the past, which is memory, or you're in the future, which is anticipation, imagination, or some within that range. And it's always vibrating in the interrelated opposites. It's either good or bad, pleasant or painful, happy, sad, loving, hating, positive, negativity. Watch your mind and see how mechanical it really is. You've never looked into these things, you don't see them and don't know, but when you look into them, you'll recognise. This thing that we think is the be-all, this thinking process, is very mechanical in its functioning. And the boundaries we put upon ourselves are the words. Good, bad, pleasant, painful, they're the limitation. Happy, sad. And before that, the little child's got no boundary. He's got no words. So we put the conceptual limitations on ourselves. And the thing you've got to look at also is see that this word, these words, the word's never the thing. The word is never the actual. Take the word water. Can you drink the word? Will it quench your thirst? Can you wash in it? Can you swim in it? You realise you can't do any of those things with the word. The word fire, does it burn your mouth when you speak it? And you take the words, these labels we're putting on things, have no substance or independent of nature of themselves. They're just a label we put on. A label we've got up, we human beings. We've got this label of, we call ourselves human beings. We call the so-called God the Supreme Being. Take that label supreme off. Take the word human off. Try and separate the beingness in this room without a label. And you'll see this room is full of beingness. Being a chair, being you, being me, being this, being that. Not becoming or wasing, but pure being. So you are that pure being. Always have been and always will be. The little child learns words. Learns words I and me. The capacity of reasoning develops in him at that stage. And that's the capacity these human forms have. Where animals, birds, insects, and that don't have that particular capacity to the extent we do. But they have different capacities. A bird has the capacity of seeing. He has better eyesight than you and I will have. It has the capacity of flying. We don't have that natural capacity. But through the capacity of reasoning, we've learned to build planes, helicopters and things like that. And we've learned to build glasses, eyeglasses to see better, binoculars, telescopes, and things like that through that capacity of reasoning. A dog has the capacity of smelling, a sense of smell much better than yours and mine. Tigers and leopards and things like that will grow stripes, spots in their fur. Do you think they set out to do that? Or is that a innate intelligence? Little tiger cub doesn't say, well, I'm a tiger cub, I better grow some stripes in the fur and let them grow some spots. They don't. The intelligence energy knows what is necessary for that animal to become a better predator. Natural camouflage in them will make them a better predator. Chameleons will change colour and things like that. Birds and butterflies and things like that, they have different markings on them that disguises them to a certain extent. None of them set out to do that. Just the same as you never set out to be what you are. You can't say you were born, when did you begin? We'll have a look at that. We'll go back as far as your mother and your father. That life essence, that innate intelligence energy that pattern shaped and formed your father, enabled a sperm to form in that pattern, a microscopic particle you can't see with your naked eye. And the same intelligence energy, the microscopic particle, formed a thing called an ovum, an egg in your mother. Another microscopic particle you can't see with naked eye. But that ovum was suffused with intelligence. It knew to fasten on, to attach itself to the wall of the uterus. And the sperm knew what to do. It swam to the ovum. It had the capacity of swimming, suffused with intelligence in it, and knew where to swim to, and it knew to penetrate that ovum. When it penetrated, that intelligence knew what to do because it doubled that cell and redoubled it. And the blueprint that you are today, which was formed in that pattern, and that doubled that cell and redoubled it. What were you doing about it then? Did you say got to grow a few fingers, or a liver, or a lung, or a heart? You realise you had no say in the matter whatsoever. But the intelligence energy knew what to do. That you had to form that little embryo, that little fetus, and grew it. You were born, and when you came out, did you say, I've got to take my first breath, or did the intelligence know what to do? Did you got to say, I've got to start my heart beating? And you realise it's grown you from then on, right up till then. All the changes that have come about in you have never been done by you that believed in everything. Though you believe that you've done a hell of a lot, you know, but there's not one thing you can do with something. So you can't, that little child can't do much with I or me. He learns that I or me, and it's when he feels separate from it then, because when he looks out there, now when he's got the capacity of reasoning, that doesn't fit the word I. or me. So that must be not I, or not me, the opposite. And when he sees something as not I, not me, naturally he feels separate from it. And with that sense of separation comes insecurity and vulnerability. From that time on, we're insecure and vulnerable, and that's when our search actually begins, because from then on we're seeking to be some secure, become whole and complete, because we've taken on the belief that we are separate. And not realising we're never separate in the first place. And we can't seem to do it or recognise it ourselves, so what do? That's when we form the concept of a God. Higher power, something superior. As soon as you've got the idea of God, it vibrates in the opposite, what's happened? You've got to have its opposite, the devil. As soon as you've got that opposite, this God lives in a place called heaven, then you've got its opposite, hell. So we've formed all these concepts and ideas and start living from that point of view. No wonder we get into all the strife we do. So you can't do much with I or me, so what we do, we add to that I or me events, experiences, things that have happened to us, added on to that I. Things we've learned and acquired, added on. Like, comes I'm Bob, my parents told me something, my name is Bob. I'm Australian, I'm a good fellow, I'm not so good, I had a bad childhood, I'm unhappy. Get angry, I'm fearful. All these concepts are added onto that I thought. And I've formed a conceptual image of what I believe myself to be. A conceptual image, it's not the actuality. An image based on concepts, ideas and events that have happened to me. And that's what we call, that image is what we call the reference point, the self-centre or the ego. That's all the ego is a conceptual image based on past events and experiences. And the past events and experiences are something that already happened, they're dead, they're gone. So we're constantly relating to a dead image. So no wonder we get locked into all the psychological problems we get. The fear, the anger, the self-pity, the resentment. All because we're relating to something that is a total fiction. So we need to recognise that. See that this conceptual image or ego hasn't got any power or hasn't got any independent nature. It cannot stand on its own. So all our problems are problems of relationship. Relationship is relative to. And relativity is dualism. So you're never going to get to it from that point of view. It's all relative to this image we've got. And see how that works. Little child was functioning spontaneously. Now he's come to believe in this me or I, so he loses that spontaneity. No longer, he thinks he knows better and thinks he can work it out better by relating it to me, a memory, what he's learnt and picked up along the way. So we lose our spontaneity and are functioning from that believed in entity, that conceptual image we've got. And something comes up and I don't like it. How do you know? Well, I've had this experience before and I don't like it. So things we don't like, we want to get rid of. So what do? We resist it. Try to push it out the way and get rid of it and resist it. And you've got to realise that any resistance that's going on is conflict. If you're in resistance of any sort at all, you're in conflict. And any conflict you're in is disease. If you're in conflict and you're in some trouble, isn't that uneasiness? And isn't uneasiness disease, another way of putting disease? Something comes up and I do like. No matter how much you like it, the good things change. Because remember, this manifestation is a dualistic manifestation, and they call it Maya or illusion, and it's constantly changing. It's transient. It's forever changing. That body you walked into the room with has changed. There are cells dying in it right now and being replaced. You haven't got the same body, and you go back over your life, you see you haven't got the same body you had as a little child. Throughout the time, it's constantly changing. So we don't want the good stuff to go, but not realise it's transient, and it does go. No matter how much you love something or want to keep something or hang on to it there, it's going to change. After a while it's going to become very ordinary, very boring, or it's going to die, it's going to move away, but it's going to grow out of it or whatever, but it's certainly going to change. It's transient. We don't want it to change, so we resist again. And resistance is conflict, conflict is disease. And all our problems come about from that constant resistance going on. Because it's only me that can be fearful. When relating to me, this concept of it, it's only me that can be angry. Only me that can be full of self-pity, unhappy, resentful, or all the rest of all the other conceptual ideas we got can only happen to this when it's related to this believed in entity. So me is the cause of all my psychological suffering, my fear, my anxiety, my stress, my unhappiness, as a result of the cause, relating them to the cause me. And you hear about a lot about so-called karma in these spiritual circles. All that karma is cause and effect. So, but what happens if I investigate the cause, the me, and see the cause is a fiction? Can there be, and ask myself the simple question, can there be effect without a cause? If it's not being related to a cause, can there be effect? What's it going to stay with? What's it going to fix on? Hang on, if it's not fixating onto this blue group. You realise it's not fixating on it, it can't stay there. It's going to move on. And you notice this at all here, I tell you for a fact that all those psychological problems that I had for years and years and years, and worked on them one at a time, like peeling the skin off an onion, there'd be another one underneath and another, never got anywhere. And recognising this through this data pointing this out to me, it came to say that there wasn't an entity there, there was nowhere for them to attach to, and they naturally fell away. And we're not talking crap here. It's not just happened to me, it's happened to other people that are in this room now. To see what we're pointing out and put it into effect, and it's happened for them too. So nothing that's, it's unique to anybody. Every so-called believed person in this room is that same intelligence energy. Now whether you investigate it or not, that's up to you. Nobody's going to force it down your throat. If you want to stick in the old habit patterns and the old beliefs, well, go ahead. But don't complain why you continue to be unhappy. Wei Wu Wei said years ago, why are you unhappy? He says, because everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do is for yourself. And then he said, there isn't one. Recognise that, and it's a fact too, there isn't self. So what are you going to relate to then if you've got a self to relate? Doesn't mean to say that the pairs of opposite won't manifest. The thinking will be in the opposites, the sensations will be in the opposite. They come up, but they're not attached to, not fixated on, not resisted where they hang around when the very resistance of them keeps them there longer than they should be. Have a look at nature again. In nature functions in the pairs of opposites, a dualistic manifestation. But nature hasn't made a reference point of itself, hasn't got an ego, hasn't got a self-centre. So day never fights with night. Silence doesn't fight with sound. Winter doesn't fight with summer. Stillness doesn't fight with movement. Silence doesn't fight with sound. Each comes along, takes their turn and move on. It moves on, and that's what the saying goes here. Where are yesterday's thoughts now? Haven't they gone? Where are yesterday's sensations and feelings? Haven't they moved on? But they've hung around longer than they should because we fixate on them and keep them there with that belief that this entity can do something about them, can alter them, modify or correct them, instead of letting them be as they are. So, to recognise that the cause of all your problems is me, this ego, have a look and see how real this ego is. We ask you to have a look along these lines and see for yourself. You're seeing right now, everybody is seeing right now, and you're hearing right now. That's a fact. When you opened your eyes this morning, did you say, now I'm going to start seeing and now I'm going to start hearing? Well, as soon as you opened your eyes, wasn't everything there in the room and everything outside you? It was all there immediately, spontaneously. And you probably think that seeing has changed. The same seeing you've had all day, you had yesterday, last week, the week before, and the year before that, the same seeing. Seeing hasn't changed, but the content has changed. And the content is continually changing all the time. transient. But the seeing itself doesn't change. The same with the hearing. Opened your eyes this morning, the hearing was there. If somebody shouted at you loudly in deep sleep, you'd have heard it, saying that hearing was there in a moment. But again, the hearing hasn't changed, but the content has changed. So you're seeing and you're hearing. Ask yourself this. Does my eye tell me I see? Does your eye saying, look at this? My eye doesn't say, look at this Bob, or look at that, and that's good or that's bad. You realise that my eye and your eye, if you look at it, can't say anything at all. The seeing is happening through the eye. It's happening, the eye is the instrument through which the seeing is happening. And the thought I see comes up and is translated through what we call the thinking. The thought I see comes up and translates it. The same with the hearing. The hearing is happening through the ear, and the ear is not saying analyse this, that's a good sound, that's a bad sound. Not saying anything at all, it can't. But the hearing is happening through the ear, and the translation comes up, the thought comes up, I hear. And again, when that seeing and hearing comes up, when the seeing comes up and you say I see, it's not just a bare seeing. Remember what you've added to that I. It's me, Bob, the Australian, the good fellow or the bad fellow, all the label I've got about myself, now thinks it has the capacity of seeing. So I've given it some value which it hasn't got. So that conceptual image, Bob, thinks it has the capacity of seeing. The same with the hearing. What I hear comes up, and it's not just the bare I hear, it's me, Bob, that thinks it has the capacity of hearing. So now I've got this conceptual image that thinks it has the capacity of seeing and hearing. Well, does it? Have a look. Ask yourself this, can the thought I see actually see? Can a thought see? Close your eyes, look around the room and see what you can see with a thought. You realise you can't see anything at all with a thought. Put your hands over your ears, see what you can hear with a thought. Again, when the thought comes up, you think it's that I thought, that conceptual image. So realise the thought I see can't see, and the thought I hear can't hear. Is the thought I am aware your awareness? You realise the thought I am aware can't be your awareness. If that awareness is there, whether you think I'm aware or not. Is the thought I choose the choice maker? We all think we choose our thoughts, we've got that belief. But if you could choose your thoughts, why would you ever be miserable or have an unhappy thought? Do you think to be miserable or unhappy? You know, the thought comes up, idea, and the sensation comes up with it. So you see, this thought-up entity, this ego that we put so much belief in, hasn't got any power and hasn't got any independent nature. I mean by that, a thought can't stand up to anything because it's got no substance or independent nature. And have a look at that. You know? There's no life essence in that body, and you're a corpse, there's a corpse there. How many thoughts does a corpse have? It's got the eyes, it's got the ears, the nose, the tongue, the mouth, the lungs and everything. It's got all those organs there. But there is no life energy animating it. So it can't do a single thing. So how can a thought do anything? It's got no power. And you realise it's the life essence that's doing the lot. Just the same, you've got a computer and you've got all those information on it, but what information can you get on it if you haven't got the power turned on? Can't get anything at all. Well, it's the same with this. That life essence is not animating and patterning expression through that body. You can't even blink an eye, take a breath, do anything at all. So you see, it's not this belief in ego, which we suffer according to, because we've taken on these beliefs and labels, put on them, causes all our psychological problems. It doesn't have to be so. Because it hasn't got any power, it hasn't got any power or any independent nature at all. So that's why we say, look into that and see for yourself. Now, if you've got any questions or arguments, or tell us your version of it, bring it up, and things will come out, and we'll go along the way. But it's the chance, if you're interested in this stuff at all, instead of looking into it later, and understand it doesn't suit, you want to walk out and never bother about it again. But if you're moved to, if something inside you resonates and activates you to do something about it, you do. And it's not hard, it's quite simple when you really look into it. We say it's a tough one or a hard one, but how can it be if it's got no independent nature or any power of its own? You are life itself.
I'll come over for the arguments.
Pardon?
I'm here for the arguments.
Good. Get into it.
Well, I guess like for me, like the search or the apparent search, that only comes up in thought. So if there's no thought, there's no search because there's nothing but awareness. And this, I don't even know what my question is. So then there's the apparent search or whatever that comes up, and whether it was the spiritual search or before it was, I need to acquire more money or I need to get to be a whatever position or whatever it is. Like that's the same. It's kind of the same energy. Or that same idea that you're lacking something and you need something to be something more than what you are. So then the search comes into it. I don't know whether there's a question anywhere in here, but then the search comes into it. So then, again, that's just arising in thought. And sometimes the search is there and sometimes you're making toast or whatever. But it still comes up periodically. So is it the idea that you can't do anything, the thing that, the lesson that I hear that you can't do anything to attain because, it's like what you say at the start of your talk, that there's nothing you can get and there's nothing you can give me and all that sort of stuff. So it's just leaving everything as it is, like the apparent search is there and it arises, but it's a matter of realising that. Not realising in the sense that there's a doing in it, but like ultimately realising, the realisation occurring after a while that it's just all thought.
After what we've said, and you've been coming here a few times, what do you realise?
Huh?
Who's going to get anything?
Well, nobody gets anything.
No. So you're not going to say, well, I can't do anything and not do anything, are you? Because you know you can't. But the functioning goes on.
Yeah.
If you can't do anything, why are you still breathing? Why are you still breathing hard?
Because it just happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the thoughts come up. What's your next thought going to be?
Don't know.
So you can't say what your next thought is. So we realise from that all thought is unthought. There is no thinker of a thought.
Yeah, I get that.
So the thought comes up spontaneously,
But
and then you say, "Oh, I think."
Yeah, but every now and then a thought will appear that seems to give a position to a me, like the overseer of other thoughts, like that kind of shell game.
Now we've looked into the being. Can you see that there's nothing there?
Mm-hmm.
No, that for certain.
Yeah.
Well, if something is false now, when was it ever true?
Yes.
And to realise it could never have been real or true in the first place. We've believed it was, the energy of the belief has gone into it and made it seemingly so, just the same as its manifestation seems to be solid and substantial, but it's not.
And the other thing that I think that comes up for me in thought is that when I think that I'm getting somewhere with this, I think that I know something and everybody else is stupid. Like I think that the thought comes up that oh, I'm starting to understand that there's nothing going on in here, but there's all these other crazy people in the world that still think there's something going on. But the reality is there's nothing going on in here. There's nothing going
No,
on.
but you
By
reckon-
that creates a dynamic for me where I'm like, wary.
Yeah, well, you're still
else.
trying to grasp with the mind, but you're recognising things since you've been
Yeah.
coming here. You've
Yeah.
recognised and resonated with a lot of them, haven't you?
Mm.
You've seen through.
Yeah,
You've still got that little me coming at it and
yeah.
sticking its nose in, trying to reckon it. See, that's a habit that never had any power, never needed independent nature.
Mm. And is it right to just call it? It's habitual, isn't it? It's like
Yeah, because you keep going in the old habit until you recognise it as a habit, and habits can be broken. You don't go there. As I say, you go down to the ocean, and I'll say, give me a bucket of blue water out of the sea. You'll say, don't be stupid. No matter how many buckets of water out there you pull out of the sea, they'll never be blue. But you believed it was blue until you questioned it and had a look. Now, go down there, does the sea stop appearing to be blue? It'll still appear to be blue, but now you know the truth about it. And the old scriptural saying is, know the truth will set you free. You're not bound by it anymore, so you'll never go down there with any intention of getting a bucket of blue water. They can still admire the seeming colouring. There's metaphors we use to prove it. Another one's the water in a mirror. Another one's a rainbow. You're going to fly up and try and graft a rainbow. You weren't cut out to try and graft it. There's nothing there. It's just the sun shining through the mist, like a light shining through a crystal. It will break up into colours. And those colours can appear on the wall or everything like that. Can you grab any one of those colours? Though they appear to be so, they're not. They have no substance or any independent nature. So we've got to look along these metaphors and see that it's the same thing, All these things that we've taken to be real, when you question them and look into them, their reality is that non-conceptual, ever-fresh presence awareness. That awareness which you can't put a concept or a label on it. We're talking about non-duality, which another label for that is oneness. We get a thing called awareness and you start looking for awareness. And when you get a concept of what you think awareness is, that won't be it because it'll be a conceptual image. But is anybody in this room unaware right now? I said, no, I'm not unaware. If you're not unaware, you must be aware. Where did you have to go? What did you have to do to get that, to recognise that? Didn't it just dawn on you immediately when it's pointed out to you? I am not unaware. Full stop. And another thing they call it oneness. Well, awareness must be oneness. Oneness must be awareness. Because there's not two. Different labels we put on the same thing. Different expressions of it. So what are you going to waste time seeking for? Just a matter of recognise. And this has already been cognised. You've all had tastes of it, no matter who you are, you've all had tastes of it through your life, throughout your life. When things have happened and fall into place quite naturally, you say, that was good. You get a good experience. Then it passes and you go along your merry way back in a thing. Or sometimes you try to get back to it. I've got to have that experience again. But you don't realise you'll never get back to it. You can never have that one again because it's dead. It's finished with. So leave it be. Don't try to get back. The very trying to get back is obscuring the ever-fresh and new expression to come up. You leave that one dead and you're open to it, a fresh and new insight or experience will come up later. And it will constantly happen throughout the time. didn't have to look for the silence, did you? People get the idea, I've got to find the silence. There's more silence in this room than what there is sound. More stillness in this room than what there is rhythms. Same outside, you go outside, and a base is that silence, is that stillness. It doesn't have to be searched for. What was your name on the email?
Richard,
Richard. How does this sit with you?
well, I guess. Like, I guess I've been trying to find things to make my mind crunch. Like, just with what you were talking about. Like, what even is the search? You know? Like, what's it for? And if awareness is right now, and always will be, like, what am I doing, you know? And the more I go through things, the more I realise how futile it is. Like, it's almost sad, you know what I mean? Like, just now I had the thought, like, I give up, like, I'm done with this. This is just stupid. And I guess that's where I feel like I'm at, that most of all this seems like really absurd to me. No offense to anybody. But yeah, like, you know, I still want to be there. I want to be in it. I want to feel it. Yeah, like, even though there is no distance, I guess this is the closest I've felt. Like I said, I'm trying to find things that where my mind can chew on, and then just I don't know.
And you get everything kicked out from under you, and you're left with
Yeah,
the
nothing.
no thing.
Yeah.
And so the habit wants to get back into it again. And just
Yeah.
sit with that no thing as much as possible.
Yeah.
Till, you know, in that cognising emptiness, insights will come up in that, and things will dawn on you. You'll realise.
Another thing that you just said was like, don't get attached to an experience of something you may have felt in the past.
Yeah.
Like, just let go of that as well.
Exactly.
That was huge to hear. Yeah. So,
Yes, just leave it as it is. As is means unaltered, unmodified, uncracked. Uncorrected, just as it is. Not attached, not detached, no preference, no partiality, no comparison. It'll change of itself without, you know, trying to change it, which it does. Have a look at your life, see your thoughts. Where are yesterday's thoughts now? Where are yesterday's sensations and feelings? You know?
And the funny thing, Bob, everybody who walks into this room brings with them a whole bag of stories about enlightenment.
Yeah.
We all come with our assumptions, our presuppositions, other people's stories, and they become a reference point in themselves. The simplicity that's being pointed to, that can't be it, because it doesn't compare with something that's been heard or read about. And the beautiful simplicity that there is no enlightenment. Who could ever be enlightened? Because one of the things that constantly has been pointed to here, the thinking process has turned back on itself to examine what is often the unexamined assumption, which is the reference point, the point of view where we're coming from. Because we typically don't look at that. I spent many years looking for enlightenment Am I there yet? Experiences happening, all sorts of phenomena happening, and then thinking, oh, how do I get back there? Or how do I hang on to that? And Buddha said it 2,500 years ago. There are only two fixations. Those primary fixations are the cause of all suffering. Wanting to hang on to something good, wanting to keep it, or wanting to push something away. And that push-pull is the cause of all suffering. And the unexamined assumption, the reference point, the subject, that co-creates any object. There's no enlightenment, there's no me, because they are a co-creation. And it's not that anyone gets this. It's not that there's answer. When the question that ceases to actually hold itself as a question, the questions fall away. Without a question, there's no dilemma. It's not that answers arise, it's simply the questioning falls away. And I love it the way you express it, Bob, that this stuff dawns on me. Just like the dawn, the sun rising, it just seeps into you. And just coming here a few times, it's pretty easy to get the conceptual package that's going on here. People can get hold of the concepts. But so what? That's just another package of stories, somebody else's belief system. The important thing here is to do your own homework. And the wonder is that anything is the window. Well, who's the me that's caught up here? Where is the reference point that this is measured from? Or and particularly any upset or any disturbance, they're wonderful windows. You know, suddenly an upset happens, an anxiety, an anger, or a hurt. Wonder. Where's the reference point? Where's the me that is actually holding this? Because without me, there's no hurt or anxiety or fear. Because they have to be related to something in the past. And in the seeing through, all that's left is a movement of energy which changes and falls away. So the important thing is to do your own homework. And one pointer that's hardly ever picked up is the one that says actually enter into whatever you don't want. So any fear or anxiety or any disturbance, go to the heart of it. Go into it so completely that there isn't any separation. Dissolution happens. That's a fabulous paradox. That the very thing that's supposedly the issue is actually the window.
And when you said it dawned on you, I stayed up all night waiting for the daylight. Then it dawned on me.
That thing that you were saying about Buddhist teaching about one things that you're hanging on
The
to,
fixations, yeah.
pushing away.
Mm.
But then there's the realization as well that they only arise in thought.
Mm, of course.
And it's not you that's actually hanging
No.
on to anything.
Without a you, there's no fixation.
Yeah.
Because they're a co-creation,
Yeah.
just like you in this world.
Mm.
This me that everyone carries on about, it's as real as that chair.
Mm. Yeah, because every now and then, like I'll get that concept, but then all of a sudden the thought appears and there's no separation, and you're just in it, and you're that person. And you're like, oh, why am I, wanting this or pushing it? And all of a sudden you're in the drama, and it's just like, and then that'll, yeah. So it's interesting, and sometimes you've got space between it, but yeah.
Got anything you want to say, David?
Yeah, I'm glad Peter mentioned the chair, because I have a question about the chair. I want to know, Bob, what you see when you see that.
See a chair.
Yeah.
That's the label you put on. See all this manifestation, just as it is. But the difference is, But it's only vibrating patterns of energy.
Yeah.
In my relation. Still going to appear just the same as you go down the ocean. Water's going to appear to be blue. But you know it's not blue. You know that's just made up of subatomic particles, you know, energy. That's just the same as this body. It's no different from this body. See what you call a body. And put a microscope on that, you know, it's pretty cool. Not that you've got to see anything different at all, really.
Yeah. At this really gross level of human experience, this experience is something that can be sat on and has a certain colour.
Yeah, but you can't sit on the word.
Yeah.
You're
No.
called as a chair. You
Yeah.
can't sit on the word.
Yeah.
So is it a chair?
Well, most of us would call it a chair except our Japanese friends.
Yeah, but that's just a label you put on.
It's just a label.
It's the same as this body. We put the label on this body. Yeah.
Yeah. Some non-duality people have tried to convince me that they don't see the object that they're seeing, you know, patterns of energy moving around.
What do they see? A bum holder?
Yeah. And I don't know. I'm just, you know, I'm just glad we can still speak sensibly about things. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing special about this.
Mm.
And yeah, I love it when Bob often starts meetings with, I'm not speaking to anybody, I'm not speaking to any mind. I'm speaking to that I am that I am.
Yeah.
It's just natural, it's heart to heart, it's life to life. It's no big deal.
Mm.
And in a very real sense, it's the thatness that's speaking
Mm.
to itself. So the notion of somebody speaking and somebody being a listener, where is that? And just coming back to something you said earlier, everything manifesting, any object that we perceive as such,
Speak up, Diane. We're all here.
any is the thatness expressing.
Yes, yes.
So there's nothing that is closer to the awareness. There is nothing that is further away. There is no problem as such that prevents this seeing or this understanding.
Mm.
You know, when they say that everything is that, everything is the thatness, everything is awareness, yeah, that's for real.
Mm.
Yeah. Everything is that awareness manifesting and playing out, dancing
Yeah, sure.
as this form.
Yeah. So it's oneness, it's one thing, but we can still talk about the parts, I suppose, would you call it, or the many things, the everything.
Sure, that's the way it manifests.
Yeah, it manifests as that. The
Yeah.
one thing manifests as those the things. Yeah. Okay.
And there's no problem, because in understanding,
Mm.
there's no issue.
Yeah, it is as what it is, as they say in the classics.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it is what is,
Yeah.
precisely.
And something as simple as the visual field, like everyone's seen, and we see and we can name different objects, yet we only ever see totality, because you cannot separate anything from the field.
Mm.
You know, and this is it's so damn obvious. It's in front of us every moment, that all you can ever see is that totality, with the appearance of different bits and pieces that can be named. Yet you cannot take this chair out of this totality.
No.
You can't separate anything,
Yeah.
just
sure.
as you can't separate the auditory track from the visual track. You know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe you can notice or not notice, yet everything is inseparable.
Yeah.
You know, the quantum physicists talk about unbroken wholeness or seamless sameness. There's only just that, and its multi-sensory appearance. You know, and no one can ever take one part out from totality.
No.
You know, there's only totality. You can't have totality and a chair.
Yeah. That's absurd, yeah.
So you go outside on a nice day and there's a few clouds in the sky. Pick a small one, don't pick one too big, and watch it. It'll gradually disperse and merge into space. And where's it gone? Has it left space?
Mm.
But it'll never be a cloud again, never find that same shape and form. Just the same as all this manifestation, it merges back into that emptiness. Hang on, Roger.
Had a lovely day today.
Pardon?
Had a lovely day today. I'm on holidays at the moment, so I can
Yeah.
smell the roses. And sitting in a temple this afternoon, a Buddhist temple up in the Dandenongs.
Yeah.
And there was no one there. It was sort of, which is no one there. And I remember closing my eyes. There's a beautiful ornate Buddhas and all sorts of lovely colours, gold embossed images. So close my eyes, and obviously it all disappears. And then I was thinking, as you're sitting here today, nothing really has changed from when I was sitting there to when I'm sitting here, apart from the content.
Yeah. So you are the changeless in which the change seemingly happens.
I think you can appreciate the beauty when you're not threatened by the separateness of it.
Yes. Yes. You're totally with it, can appreciate it. There's a Buddhist saying that says, be utterly awake with the five senses wide open. That means you're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling equally. When most of the time we're in the head 90% of the time, in the past and the future, and missing out on the seeing, hearing, the tasting, touching, smelling, that are going on in the background, but they're pushed in the background and not noticed. And they might be something very valuable going on with them, because we're not with it, we're missing out on it. So it says, be utterly awake with the five senses be wide open. Then he says, be utterly open with unfixated awareness. We're not fixating on that head stuff to the exclusion. You're not fixating on anything. You're with everything, but not free to move around as it is. And this, you've got to realise, this moment is the actuality. This is where the livingness is, right now. You can't live this moment again. So if we're locked in the head stuff, we're missing out on life, a good percentage of life, with something that's now dead, the past, or something that's imaginary anticipated. When you could be what is with what is right now. There might be something in that hearing that you're excluding that would be very valuable. There might be something in the tasting or touching, smelling that would be very necessary.
And if you want to say that something is enlightenment, then that's about all it is. It's about just being here now.
Totally with it, what is. And so the very idea of enlightenment implies there's somebody who could be enlightened. And it's one without a second. Who could there be? And who could there be that's not that?
Well, I have another question about the idea of free will. And I realise for me it comes up a lot just as a thought. It's a concept that my mind, for whatever reason, likes to play with. But then you can look at it. I kind of thought, well, you can look at it both ways. That ultimately there's no free will because your life is being lived, and there's no you that's actually making any calls. but I guess, and the way I describe it is at that point where there's no thought, there's just movement or action, like there's no choice to do anything. It's like that saying where the tire hits the road, you know, that just the moment. Can you say that there's nothing but free will as well? And I know it's totally conceptual, I think, I don't know. But there's, like if you get lost in the concept of, you know, no free will, that's also completely conceptual. So there's, I don't know really, you know what I'm kind of meaning?
Yeah,
Like
every person has to wrestle with this question.
Yeah. But it's, yeah, again, like the idea of just, if I look at it conceptually through my life and I go, you know, I look at problem moments in my past or whatever, and I did it, you know, did meditations for a long time on this stuff and tried to find points where I made conscious decisions where things went wrong in my life, and I'm like, I can't find it. It wasn't there. Like there wasn't any me there doing this stuff, right? I'm going to do this, whatever it was. So I struggle with the free will thing, but yeah, the letting go of that. I mean, that's obviously a big. I don't know.
You see, you struggle with it. You couldn't find it. Then you struggle with it. Do you think you're going to find it now?
No.
Why persist?
Well, it's
You know, intelligence is telling you you've looked every which way and how, but you couldn't find it. Maybe it might not dawn on you that maybe it's not, there is no such thing.
It's more of the fantasy of control.
yeah.
And the notion that a me can control those fixations that were spoken about before. That is, when it's terrific, hang on to it. When it's not
Yeah.
terrific, push it away. So it's around the whole thing of that me
It's that whole
notion.
it's that, yeah.
Still wanting to.
Trying to say,
Yeah.
hey, look, I'm here. There's
Yeah.
there's a speck of me here.
Yes.
There's a tiny, there's an even, you know, infinitesimal part of me that can choose to do something.
Yeah. Is there some free will so I can choose one over another?
Yeah.
And look, the important thing is that one line, you can't work this out of the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That this, the issue you're wrestling with, because obviously, you know, people take hold of this and go, the law just happens, do me, whatever, man. And that's just as shit silly. You know, you get this sort of passive nihilism.
Yeah, well, this is kind of what I'm grappling with.
Yeah, and look, but the important thing is that choices are constantly happening. You know, if there's a snake there, you don't go, now, do I choose to get out of the way, or shall I choose to just stay here? No, you're on the other side of the fucking route before thought happens.
Yeah.
Because the intelligence that you are just moves you prior to thought.
Yeah.
And a lot of thinking is a post-action rationalisation. You know, a lot of our thinking process, you know, it's a naming machine. Going back to the past, or on automatic, replaying the whole story. It's just the machinery of the mind. And the important thing is to do the investigation very specifically. Like if you want to play around with free will, actually do it in real time when that thought comes up. Turn the thought in on itself. Well, where is this me that's holding this story? Now, and see, one of the things is most people aren't rigorous enough. You know, what typically happens is people hear the point about do the investigation, but most of the time it's half-assed. People go inside for a nanosecond, and then a thought comes up, and then they re-identify with the thought, and they're off their thought stream.
Yeah.
Have some rigor. You know, something comes up, like a thought around the free will, and actually go in. And this particular investigation is a spatial one. Like find the location in the body where this me resides that is holding this point of view.
Yeah.
So you're burning out, you're just turning in on that self.
Yeah.
Burning through this thought up into
I do that, and whenever I ask the question, I'm like, you've done it, you know this. Like, but it's...
But see, just what you're saying just
Yeah.
right now. You go halfway through it, thought
Yeah.
comes up, and you go, yeah, but I know this.
Yeah.
Like, knowing is useless.
Yeah.
You know, the thought up knowing about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's a deeper
Because
knowing.
that's in thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, are you alive? Are you aware? There's a knowing about awareness, prior to thought. So the important point here is just to when it comes up and you go, yeah, I know that, reinvestigate. Get to the heart of the matter.
Mm.
Get right to the core of the matter. Get to the dissolution.
Yeah.
Because the habit of, people want to work this out, having a nice conceptual package about it, And of course, all that does is take us up into the thinking machine.
Mm.
And it makes no real difference. Because this is prior to thought. You can't comprehend this. No thought, no one-liner can nail this.
Mm.
It's much more profound. It's prior to conceptualizing.
Yeah. And I realise that, I guess, in the stream of thoughts that I'm having, the concept that I have of myself wants to grab onto the idea of enlightenment because it wants to claim it.
Yeah.
And I can see that energy happening, or that thing happening. I'm like, oh, how do I, steer away from?
You don't have to do anything. Just seeing. In seeing, dissolution happens. In the seeing through. I loved your honesty because you said something similar when you first thing you spoke about tonight. About this me wanting to claim it, because that's what the spiritual me does. Because it wants to hang on to its job. Well, I'll be the spiritual I.
Yeah.
It's just more bullshit,
Yeah.
So in the seeing through, dissolution happens, and it's only habit. Oh, there you go again. But see, one thing that's often useful is to have a benevolent compassion. Because if we start reacting to the thought stream or the me story, that reaction builds it, gives it energy. So a benevolent compassion, because it's only habit. Oh, there you go. There's that spiritual me wonder plane. There you go, doing the thing. There you go, internal dialogue, la la la. There you go. How delightful. So that you neither react nor buy into it. Simply just, there you go. It's just the stream doing its thing. There's the machinery playing out its habits.
The other wee question I have is the idea of, they say the different books that I've read about the inner guru, so the voice that you have that kind of guides you through
more stuff.
Yeah,
there are no levels to emptiness.
But there's if you talk about instinct or
and people get caught up. Which is the right voice? Which is the deeper voice?
Yeah.
It's all coming from the intelligence. Is life itself doing this and that?
Saki and a guru voice. Saki.
Because it's like that thing that you go, the past events and you go, there was something telling me not to do that or whatever. You see that kind of that whole story happening. It's like saying there's a big here and there's not a big here.
And you get caught up. You've got a good me and a bad me, a deeper I that's guiding you, and a silly one. It's more stuff. It's all just mind stuff. It's all. There's no distinction. It's all thoughts. It's all appearing and disappearing.
That's why we say you won't find the answer in the mind. The answer's not in the mind, because the nature of the mind is to vibrate. And it's always vibrating in the opposite. To see prior to the thought, prior to the mind, all you do is ask yourself, what's wrong with right now if I don't think about it? To do that, you've got to pause thought for a moment. What can you say without a thought? Can you say it's good? Can you say it's bad? You realise you can't say anything at all about it. But have you disappeared? Still seeing, still hearing, still tasting, touching, smelling, but thought has stopped just for this. So in that moment, you must realise that you are beyond the thought or prior to the thought, because the life essence is still there. And the thought has stopped for a moment. If you were the thought, as we believe it, if that thought stopped, that would be the end of you. But it's not. So in that moment, you see the difference between thinking and the pure intelligence. The pure intelligence is still breathing you, beating your heart, growing your hair and your fingernails. The thought has ceased for a moment. And thought will start up again on that base. So it's no big deal to go be what they call beyond the mind or prior to the mind.
Pete, the Buddhists would say, in order to be able to do that investigation, to look in, well, first a lot of people when they look in, they hate themselves, and so because they hate themselves, then they keep looking out.
Mm.
So and then to look in, also you need to, like you say, not get distracted into thoughts. So you need to do a practice of samadhi type meditation, so that you can hold the investigation. So here we have like a path and practice of generosity and moral precepts, so that you don't hate yourself, and a meditation practice of concentration, so that you can do the investigation. So that's why they seem to create a path. What do you think about that?
It either attracts or it doesn't. No, it matters or it doesn't matter.
But who are they relating to then? That hates themselves but doesn't hate themselves. Separated themselves and set up an entity that's relating to them.
Yeah, because I hate myself, so it's so awful to look at myself that I'll just keep getting distracted by the world.
So is it fair to say if that comes up for somebody and that happens in their life, and that's happened for them?
Well,
It will just happen.
Everything's simply appearing. Everything is spontaneous. But the beauty of that we've tumbled into this room is this is a place where it's very direct.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that's just so attractive about what Bob Buffett says. It is so pared down to the bone. There's nothing frivolous or non-essential here. This is just down to the core. The simplicity of full stop.
Every time we use the word I, we separate ourselves from the moment. So I is a really good pointer or reminder that, if I'm happy at the moment, hang on, I've had a look for this I can't find it. In the moment, there's just happiness. And you don't need to go any further than that. And then when that feeling of happiness passes, hang on, I want that happiness back, I'm unhappy. Oh no, hang on, that I is a reminder that there isn't any I, there's just unhappiness. So in the moment, there's unhappiness. No big deal. That'll pass as well. And then whatever else will come up will be in the moment. It'll always be in the moment. But every time we think, I am experiencing that moment, we've separated ourselves out of it. So that can be a really good reminder that, if you've looked and you can't find the I don't know. Bob might be joking, maybe there is an I. But he doesn't reckon there is, and I've had a look and I don't reckon there is. So it's just another way to sort of try and break that habit, because a lot of it just seems to be about, the habit of thinking, I'm this, I'm that, whereas in fact, this, that is what it is.
And it's one thought appropriating other thoughts. The one thought of the me notion, imagining that the other thoughts are happening to it. And it just, me is just another in that stream of thinking.
And it's almost the nature of language to create story. Like if you look at language as a plant, like one word begets another, and then all of a sudden this story, and you're just fixated on this thing happening, and it's just like, oh wow, and it's just.
And in seeing that, there's no problem.
Yeah.
So we often say the ancient fairy tales, they never had a good moral in them, or a good story, but every fairy tale starts with once upon a time. And finishes with lived happily ever after. Takes place in time. And time is a mental concept. You ask yourself, is there a past? If I don't think about it, you can't say there's a past. Can't say there's a future without it. You'll say, I was in the past. And I will say to you, try and actually live a moment ago. And you realise you can't go back and live a moment ago. You can recall it, but you can't live it. And When you record, the only actuality you're giving it is what you're giving it when you're recording it. You can't even tell me what you thought a minute ago now unless you record it. So test that out for yourself and see if you can't. Same with the future. You can anticipate and imagine what you're going to do in 5 minutes' time or when you leave here, but you realise you can't live a moment in the future. You can't live in the future. And when you're anticipating and imagining it, the only actuality you're giving it is what you're giving it right now. People tell you you've got to try and stay in the now. I'll say try and get out of it. When you investigate, you see you're never away from it. This immediacy. It's always this immediacy. And on the other hand, when you do what they say and try to get in the now, you say, is this the now? Is this well, maybe it's it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Bob has a number of books, booklets, DVDs, CDs on the table.
Kalyani. My name's David. I sent you an email from Bristol.
Oh yes, how long?
Yeah. So finally got to get here.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
How long are you staying?
I was here on Tuesday night and I'm going back to Brisbane on Sunday night. I'm going to come in Sunday night. So,
I won't be here Sunday. Names and so forth.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
always nice to put a face to it.
yeah, sure, yeah. I already had your face because I saw your picture.